Good evening. Howdy. Welcome to the Fireside Chat, Grand Canyon Council, the last one of the year. I'm Andy Price. I'm a Scout Executive for Grand Canyon Council, and hopefully everyone can see my screen, but we've got a great image of a scout, a kid out exploring and enjoying outdoor adventures there, and along with some really important branding, and we'll come back to this, but in scouting, every new adventure, every camp out, and every badge is a chance to learn new skills and gain new experiences. Scouts and their families are welcomed into an inclusive community that encourages them to try new hobbies, serve their community, and explore the outdoors while learning. And this tagline of Discover Your Path is pretty powerful, pretty exciting. And thanks for jumping on tonight. We do fireside chats annually throughout the council. And this year we changed up the model a little bit and kind of went around 6 locations sort of by community rather than just straight by district, and 3 across the Phoenix metro area, a couple up north, a couple down south, and then this one as a virtual only fireside chat. And we use these annually to share information from the council key 3, and then talk about other things that are on everyone's mind. And communication, I think, is a challenge in our organization. And I don't mean just Grand Canyon Council, but across scouting, the 5 councils I've worked in, for some reason, communication is really a challenge. We have a lot of different stakeholder groups. And so we're really trying to do our best to do a better job with communication, be more direct, more transparent, and all of that, and share what's going on, share challenges, share successes, talk about the future, and that sort of thing. And so I'm Andy Price. I'm Scout Executive. It's hard to believe I've been here 4.5 years. The last couple of years at times have felt like dog years, and it's felt more like 40 years. And at other times it's felt like, oh my gosh, how did it blow by? And it's felt more like 4 weeks. And so depending on what time of day it is and how well I slept the night before, I might respond differently to how long it's been. But pleased to be here, honored to be here. And one of the things that's great is that every day is really a challenge, and presents a new challenge, working on behalf of kids, scouts, and the future of scouting in Arizona. So happy to be here. One of the concepts that we really are working hard to kind of share with everyone that's involved in scouting is sort of this concept of a windshield. Boy Scouts of America has been around since 1910. Grand Canyon Council by one way or another since 1921, over 100 years. And we've got a lot to be proud of. We haven't always done everything perfectly in scouting. We've certainly made some mistakes, and we've all gone through this chapter 11 here in the last few years with Boy Scouts of America. That is one example of that. But we certainly do have a lot to be proud of. But as an organization, I would tell you, my opinion, one of our weaknesses, one of our cultural weaknesses, is that perhaps we revere the past a little bit too much. And need to spend more time looking forward. Here in Grand Canyon Council in Arizona, we've got to be focused on the future, because the future is really, really bright. And I love this metaphor of a windshield, because, right there in the middle of the windshield is a rearview mirror. We can't ever forget about the past. I can just imagine driving down the 101 and not having a rearview mirror. It'd be pretty unsafe, not knowing who's behind me and all that. But I've got to be focused mainly on driving ahead and driving forward, and scouting's moving forward. The future is really, really bright for scouting in Arizona, for Grand Canyon Council, and for Boy Scouts of America across the country. And so I invite you to join me with having a big, constructive, forward view. Not forget about the past, but be respectful that we're moving forward in scouting here in Grand Canyon Council and across the country. One of the things that I think is really cool about scouting here in our council is that we're really focused on a shared vision. We call it the 2040 vision. When I came here in 2018, late in 2018, we knew the world was about to change. We were going to lose a lot of members through relationships and whatnot. And a large group of volunteers came together and started to write a new strategic plan. But rather than focus on 5-year at a time, like most scout councils do, we had the wisdom and the foresight. Judy Walden and Mike Hoffman were big parts of this as volunteers. That said, let's take a look at 20 years from now, 2040. It's not 20 years now, but at the time, 20 years down the line. How do we want to be described? What do we want for scouting in Arizona? And you can see here these 7 visions. From these statements come really all of the direction that guides our board, guides our commissioner team, guides our staff. and guides the direction that we're taking scouting. And the first two, I think, are very, very important. I'm not going to read all these to you, but the first one, that families will look first to scouting for leadership and character development. We could argue that we should put in there at the very beginning of that the word all families, but there's certainly a marketing element to this, that we've got to be top of mind for families as they consider what their kids will do. And then the second one, every youth will have the opportunity to participate and have meaningful growth experiences. That gets into membership, that gets into having enough packs and troops that are reasonably nearby for families and that are high quality and providing a great scouting experience. And we'll come back to that a little bit. But the main point of this slide is to point out that we're driving the goals of the staff, the goals of the board, the goals of the commissioners, all drive toward these goals. And we have 5-year strategic goals that line up to these. And I think it's helpful when we're all rowing the boat in the same direction, we can hopefully get where we're trying to go. The two overarching goals that we had last year were to grow scouting and to balance the budget. Proud to say Cub Scouts grew last year 3.3%. That was the second consecutive year of Cub Scout growth. Unfortunately, we were down in Scouts BSA, which is the bigger portion of the membership. It's unusual that you'd have more Scouts than Cub Scouts, but that's where we were as an organization nationally and in Grand Canyon Council last year, largely a remnant of COVID. But our Scouts BSA numbers were off a pretty good bit. We think that we inherited a lot of LDS kids that wanted to continue. And as they've aged out over the last couple of years, they haven't been backfilled by little brothers. We don't have a way to prove that. We don't know that for certain, but we think that that is the case. And I am proud to say that this year we have had a great year recruiting. We'll talk about recruiting, I think, on the next slide. But we actually turned the corner in March and actually had bottom line growth for the first time in many months, many years, I believe. But before we leave last year, we had 266 packs, troops, crews, ships. And I'm not sure where posts went off of that. We're missing the posts on the unit number. I'm not sure where that went. Just realized that after 6 of these. Our recruiting. So a point I'd like to make is that over the last several years, Jacob and I, in his role as council commissioner, have conducted a number of fireside chats, as well as focus groups, where we've gathered troop leaders, pack leaders from across the council to talk. And hey, what do you need? What's working? What's not working? What do you need from your district? What do you need from the council? So forth and so on. And pretty consistently over the 4.5 years I've been here, two very broad themes have been discussed and emerged. One is we need help with recruiting. The second is we need help with marketing and somebody providing resources, tools to help us get scouting back on the minds of the general community. And so with regard to the membership, our staff and our volunteers at the council have put together a really good toolkit. They've surveyed the councils across the country that recruit the most numbers of new youth, Cub Scouts and Scouts, and they've studied what they've done, and they've put together a gold medal, a gold standard toolkit. And we've trained volunteers. A lot of our troop leaders and pack leaders have participated in the training. And then the interesting thing is a wide response over the last couple of years has been, we don't really like that. We want to keep doing what we're doing. But the fallacy I hope you'll get is that they've acknowledged that what they're doing with recruiting isn't working. We've provided best-in-class training, best-in-class tools, and then they've said, yeah, we don't want to do that. And so I would encourage you, I would implore you to take these tools, put them to use, they'll work. This year in 2023, we are actually seeing a good change. We're seeing broader adoption. So I hope the message is getting out to our units that these tools will work and can help us achieve the goals that we have, which is to serve more kids. So we created this slide before this year started. I will point out that 2023, January, February, March, and I looked today, April, we have recruited more new youth in each of the 4 months now of this year than we did in each of the 4 last year and the 4 before that. So we are on the right trend with regard to new youth recruiting. When we think about our total number of scouts, about 5,800 kids at the end of last year, you think, was that good? Is that bad? What kind of context can we put that in? I'll tell you that there are about 960 or so thousand scout-aged kids in Grand Canyon Council's territory, more or less the state of Arizona, less the Tucson area. And so BSA defines density or market share as the number of youth you serve divided by the number of youth that could be scouts, or what we call target aged youth, or TAY. Grand Canyon Council last year, about 61 hundredths of a percent, less than 1% Cub Scouts. You can see the Scouts BSA 1.25%. Overall, right at 60 hundredths of a percent, 0.6%. Context, okay, so we are a member of what's called National Service Territory 2. Between BSA and local councils, there's a layer of organization called NSTs. 16 National Service Territories across the country. We're in number 2. Basically, it's all the councils in Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Montana, and Wyoming. And so more or less the Rocky Mountain West. Councils that we probably have a lot in common with in a general sense. The average across our territory last year, 1.07, almost 1.1%. So we're a little bit better than half that. The mean across all of Boy Scouts of America, all 248 councils, was 2.33%. So, kind of half or above, half or below that, more or less in mathematical terms. To the right on the slide, you can see if we mirrored the average of National Service Territory 2, we'd have about 9,700 scouts. And if we met the national mean, so if we were average, we'd have more than 21,000 scouts. And so I share this to let you know the opportunities there. There's nothing intrinsically different about kids and families in Arizona than in New Mexico, California, Texas, Oklahoma, Michigan, or New Hampshire. We've just got to get to them and invite them. And as it turns out, we conducted on the marketing front some research a couple of years ago with Arizona State University, and got geographically representative, socioeconomically representative, and racially and ethnically representative input from families all across the council's territory. So not just Phoenix or this or that, but across the entirety of Grand Canyon Council. And what we found out from them was, hey, we kind of are aware of scouting. We think it's supposed to be a good thing, but we don't really know anything about it, much to say. And we've never been invited to join. We don't know how to get involved. And the good news is we can do something about that. And the recruiting tools that we've put together can help us to do that. So I mentioned we had 2 overarching goals last year: grow scouting and then operate sustainably. Finance has been a real challenge in Grand Canyon Council for many decades. This slide shows you 2017 through 2022. But if we went back 10 or 15 or 20 years, you'd see mostly red for the net incomes in each of the years. The honest truth is the revenues that we earn, camping and other types of revenues, and the charitable support, the fundraising that we do, hasn't been enough to offset the costs to operate in the years. 2021, we did operate in the black. We had a successful year. You can see there nearly $780,000, which is an extraordinary amount of money. But I'll point out that in 2021, we received about $740,000 in employee retention tax credits, part of the federal government's COVID stimulus legislation that was approved, getting through the pandemic a few years ago. And we also received about $440,000 in Small Business Association PPP funds. So if you were to back those out, we would have been in the red in 21 as well. Those are certainly sort of one-time COVID-related funds. And then in 2022, we operated in the black. But I want to point out that about 1 million of the 5 million in revenue that we took in came from one donor. And he's not going to live forever. And every time he writes a check, as generous as he is, he reminds me that he's not going to be able to continue doing this forever, and that we've got to expand our donor base. And so we're working hard to do that. So we're doing a lot of the right things, but we're far from out of the woods financially. A couple finance successes I would like to share. Our popcorn sale has been growing the last 3 years. The sales per unit is very strong. The sales per selling youth, very strong. And I like to share that basically 1/3 of the amount of you see there in the sales stays in packed treasuries, and about 1/3 the council benefits from. It helps us keep other costs lower, and we pay for all the prizes and the costs of the sale out of that. And then of course about 1/3 goes to pay for the product. A lot of times, if you're involved with a scout troop, I want to speak to you for a moment. A lot of times I hear from troop leaders, we don't do the popcorn. That's more of a Cub Scout thing. Couple points on that. Across the country, overwhelmingly, the largest selling units are Scout troops, not Cub Scout packs. And I get you might have a spaghetti supper or a car wash that does well for you. But I'll tell you, many of the Webelos that cross over have a pretty good book of business, and it doesn't take very much effort for them to continue that book once they join your troop. And with the online piece now with Trails End, it's super easy. You never touch popcorn if you don't want to. And so you can continue having those scouts generate some additional funds for the troops treasury by having that continue, even if it's not your primary fundraiser. So throw that idea out to you. On the camp cards, we're going to be wrapping up the camp card sale for 23 here soon. We think it's going to look good. The indications are good. You can see here the last 3 years, we've had good growth. Incidentally, that 2020 number was pre-COVID. We really got the camp cards knocked out kind of before the COVID shut things down. So those are good numbers. The interesting thing is we have had decreasing numbers of units participate, and you can see there that the sales per unit, the units participate do really, really well. And as I think 50% of the camp card stays in the unit. Council keeps the other half to help with camp costs and other things. And we also cover the cost of generating the camp cards. We generate those locally. And the printing and so forth, prizes, whatnot, out of the council's portion of that. So units in both of these product sales retain the largest percentage of the sale there. So with that, Jacob, I want to turn it over to you as our council commissioner, and take it away, Jacob.
Great. Well, thank you, Andy, and thank you all for joining us tonight. It's great to have another good group. If we go on to the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the program successes in the last year. We've heard about some of the membership and finance related items that are great. And then on the program side of things, there's lots of good things that are going on in the council, things to be excited about. We had just shy of 2,400 scouts attend Camp Geronimo at one of our long-term camping programs, be it the fish camp program, the drone camp, the Spade Ranch High Adventure, or even just the traditional summer camp program. Over 350 that came to the RBRC resident Cub Camp. And we had just a hair under 700 people that participated in the AZ On Track program, which is really cool. That was a program that was put on by the governor's office last year to serve underserved youth and give them an opportunity to get out into summer programs. And so we were able to bring out non-scouts to our camp facilities at the Herd in Geronimo and expose them to some of the camping and outdoor experiences that we have in the scouting program. All told, we're up 17% over 2021 to 2022 in our long-term camping programs. On the short-term camping side, really exciting there too. We had all 6 of our districts run a camporee. That's the first time since we reorganized the districts back in 2018 that all 6 districts had a camporee, which resulted in 50% of our Scouts BSA aged youth attending a camporee that year, which is a really great thing. An opportunity to interact with other units and other scouts and sort of see the larger organization that we're a part of. We had over 500 Cubs attend our Camp Kaibab and Arbusi programs. About a third of our Cubs across the council attended those programs. All told, over 3 quarters, 76% from 21 to 22 in participation in these short-term camping programs. Over 120 attended NYLT youth training, premier youth training, and 45 adults went through the Wood Badge adult leadership training. We had over 11,000 merit badges, over 3,000 Cub advancements, and about 2,400 Scouts BSA level advancements. That's all the various different ranks, and over 70,000 hours of community service. So lots of great things going on, and this is happening at the unit level all across the council. So really, really cool stuff. We go on to the next slide. I'm just going to talk real briefly about some of the exciting things that are going on at our camp facilities, where the board is really leaning into investment in our properties. First speaking about the Herd Scout Pueblo, we've just started in the last couple of weeks a full master planning project at the Herd Scout Pueblo, where we're going to reimagine how we use that entire property. We're going to build a scout service center, a new scout shop, and a 24/7 well, maybe not 24/7, but a year-round adventure base for youth that will be able to serve scouts as well as youth from the community there at the Herd property. So there's some very exciting things going on there. Plus, there's other new investments that we're making as well, upgrading restrooms, upgrading ramadas. And then some of you may be aware of the new Dave Alexander Leadership Plaza that we dedicated back in December. We had about 100 young women from the Scouts BSA and Cubs program attend that, and the unveiling of the Ascending Eagle statue that was commissioned. So it's very exciting. Lots of cool things going on there at the Herd Scout Pueblo. And then if we go to the next slide, Camp Geronimo also has some great projects going on. We've been able to secure some funding to help us with projects to upgrade some of our staff cabins, as well as putting in upgrades to the shower and restroom facilities for Staff Hill. This will allow us to continue to attract better and better camp staff, which elevates the program and thereby feeds back to what everyone's getting to experience, which is really cool. We're also doing a lot of infrastructural things there at Geronimo, upgrading the electrical system, upgrading and shoring up the water systems and those sorts of things. And we also partnered with the Forest Service, who put in a helicopter pad, allowing them to have firefighting access, and then us to be able to benefit from that for medical reasons and things like that. So lots of investment going on at the camps as we look to the future of scouting in Arizona. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Tom Curzon.
Thanks, Jacob. Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking some of your evening to join us, and thanks for everything you're doing for the kids and in scouting. We all appreciate it very much. And I would point out we didn't spend a nickel on that helicopter pad. Andy, if you want to go to the next slide. What I want to talk about are two initiatives the board is focused on among a number. And part of what we're focusing on is that goal of 65,000 youth served in 2040, and thinking today about what needs to happen in order for that to be possible. One of the things we're doing is to focus on our organizational structure, which is 100 and some years old. It's sort of the classic pyramid structure. And we are reimagining that into a much more functional organizational structure that, as this diagram shows, has units, the kids and the unit leaders and their families at the center of the bullseye, and then wrapping technology and support around them, and really taking advantage of where modern technology is going, and recognizing that as we scale and have more and more kids and more volunteers, the number of volunteers it will take to support 65,000 youth is significant. And one of the things we've realized is we need to really approach our organizational structure in a way that maximizes the availability of our resources and improves our resources that are available to the units and their leaders and their families. And so we are putting into place a structure that embraces that and that we can grow into over time, and it's functionally based. Andy, next slide. The timeline for this organizational, this basically reorganization, is on this slide, and it's been several years in the making. And we're now to the point where we've gotten a green light from the board, and we are working on the individual components and elements of the charters for the various committees, job descriptions, the whole 9 yards. and beginning to think about what's the training that's going to be required, the recruiting and all of that. And the goal is to roll that out in February of 2024, so less than a year from now. That's the plan. And then we fully recognize that we're not going to get it perfect. And like so many things, it will need to evolve and get better. So we expect there will be a 3.1 and a 3.2 and a 3.3 and so forth as we learn and grow and improve. All right, next slide. The second initiative I want to focus on is the membership and the growth strategy. Membership, as this slide indicates, is really a function of 4 roles. The existing units play 3 of those roles, or the lead on 3 of those roles, which is recruiting new youth and volunteers, retaining existing youth and volunteers, and rechartering. And we support all that. And Andy talked about the marketing tools that are available, for example, to do that. The 4th function is creating new units. And this is one that the professional staff and the board are focusing on. And in particular, we're focusing on what we describe as scouting deserts, where scouting isn't today, both geographically and demographically, and opening up scouting and extending scouting to reach more kids. And what that in turn, we think, involves in a very large way is basically the council and scouting making more friends. All of us involved, reaching out, building new relationships with community leaders, community organizations, and finding the organizations that are willing to support creating new units, particularly new units in areas where we don't serve today. And that's something that our board has been focused specifically on, including just in the last couple of weeks, we had some workshops focusing directly on who can our board members introduce our teams to, specifically names, phone numbers, email addresses, right, to build out our relationships in a way that will lead to growing scouting. And I think, Andy, that does it.
Yeah, thank you. It's a treat that Jacob and Tom both have been participating in these. I've been part of Fireside Chats for probably more than 20 years for sure. And generally they've been staff, senior staff. And since I've been here, I've taken lead on them from a staff perspective, and many councils don't do these at all. It's been especially fun the last couple of years to have all 3 of us participate and have a voice from the board, a voice from the commissioner team, and then of course the Scout executive. So pretty cool. So the other purpose of the Zoom, of the Fireside Chat, is to answer questions that you might have, address things that are out there. I would encourage you to use the chat. You can chat those comments to me, to Tom, to Jacob, and we can address those. We're going to take a cue from one of the things we do at Geronimo when we do our Tuesday meetings. And once we've, if anything comes up, once we've talked about it, we'll move on. We won't belabor any individual points. As a film on a couple years ago, and I heard some people from the front of the room say, "Remember 456." And I did not understand what they were talking about. And they were sort of repeating a phrase that has taken off in their council. And finally, after saying it a handful of times, I realized trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind. I thought, oh, they're saying, hey, remember, a scout is friendly, courteous, kind. I thought that was pretty cool. And it kind of reminded me of one of the things we learned, phrases we use in the South where I'm from. You attract more flies with honey. So happy to talk about things that are on your mind, answer questions that you've got. You can put those in the chat and we'll address those. I'm going to turn off the screen share so we're all a little bit bigger on the screen here. And let's see here, make sure. Yeah, I think it's turned on. Good. So if anybody has anything, you want to throw it in the chat. One thing I will mention that wasn't in the slide deck, but came up at, I guess, 2 of the other Fireside Chats. question about kind of where are we with camps? And you may have seen we put a video out, I think last week, on the status of the camps. We hadn't really made any announcements since last summer, and nothing's really changed, but we had a request to put out something there. So we went ahead and put an announcement out there. The honest truth is, just to be real transparent, we can't afford 4 camps at 6,000 kids. And so that's one of the reasons, aside from the moral imperative to serve more kids, we've got to grow so we can offset the cost of about $600,000 a year to maintain those 4 camps. So a question about training days, and it would be helpful to identify in plain terms who it applies to. I think that is in reference to the homecoming events that we are doing. And it dawned on me in the last couple of weeks that we were not clearly communicating the homecoming event and what's going on there. And so I've worked with our marketing director, Colin, and talked with Greg to work on that to improve that. So you should see an improvement there, and that's a good and very fair point. Question about the lawsuit, the Chapter 11 being settled. So Grand Canyon Council had a total debt of a little bit more than $7 million. We've sort of been casually saying 7.1 million. It's between 7 and 7.1. That number was set in 2021. It hasn't changed. We have already paid about $1.4 million, about $1.4 million in cash was paid last fall into an escrow account. The balance of that, $5.8 million, is going to be paid through a sale of 12 to 13-ish acres at the Hertzgott Pueblo. It's the northeasternmost portion that's sort of not the Girl Scout campsite, but the other side, that's sort of adjacent to some other privately held property that's already been subdivided and developed. And so that property, that portion of the herd, has been listed for sale. And so we will continue to have full use of that 12 to 13 acres until it sells, or for 36 months, whichever takes shorter. And then at what point it sells, or at 36 months, we will lose access to that 12 to 13 acres. So the good news is we are only going to lose that one piece of property and not lose anything more, which was kind of anticipated in earlier sort of calculations. So good. Let's see, there's a comment a while back, a rumor circulated council wanted to build a welcome center in the yard between the parking lot and Spade Ranch. So there is a donor who has contributed some funds to a welcome center at Geronimo, and to date we have, I don't remember the number, it's less than $10,000 of what's probably a $200,000 to $300,000 welcome center. Sure, we would love to build a welcome center. I don't know that we have some rough drawings. We don't have specific plans for that, but that is part of a larger set of ideas that we've got for Camp Geronimo. So yeah, so Doug, yes, I don't know that I'd call it a rumor exactly, but yeah, we'd love to do that, and we've received a little bit of funds on that. It is not a priority. We're not actively fundraising to that. We've got other projects that are more immediate. So no ETA on construction. Yeah, Tom, good point. There was another set of feedback we got from one of the Fireside chats earlier this year about calendaring, and the sentiment was sort of like, hey, we want to attend council activities, district activities, and we understand that you have to have a drop dead date, but often activities aren't on the calendar with enough information that we can effectively get our scouts excited, families excited, and registered before you hit the drop dead date, and it's hurting our ability to participate. And so we took that feedback and spent some time talking through that and how to make some adjustments. And so we've made some changes to our calendaring process. What was a 60-day out drop dead date for activities has been moved forward to 30 days. So we will wait until 30 days before an activity before we make a decision on whether the activity can occur or not. And I don't have the notes in front of me, but we set a standardized number for registrants for an overnight versus a day event. So there's a specific number, and all overnight events will be the same. All day events will be the same. So it won't be, well, this event needs this and that event needs that. I'll tell you, with 30 days out, we do run the risk that patches may not be on site. So there's, a potential drawback to doing that. But also it's going to take us a few months to get there, but we're going to consistently keep activities on the calendar with full details much further out in advance than what we've been doing here lately. It's challenging because largely we're working with volunteer groups, and sometimes getting volunteers to be focused on something that's 9 months away, 6 months away, a year away is challenging. When we say we've got to have this camp repacket, we've got to have for this camp repacket, and they go, well, it's not till September. Well, September's here, so we're going to change our culture and move towards that. But that was good feedback and action that we took on that. There's a question about BB gun shooting, and there's a pricing error on the website, Jared. That number, that $24 shouldn't have been set that way. This came up a couple weeks ago, and I talked to Greg, and I thought that was adjusted. So I don't know if you're using current numbers or out-of-date numbers, but we should have changed that a few weeks ago. And it was just an error that somebody made, and so I'll double check with Greg to make sure that we've changed that. But that was not the right number, and I apologize for that. Good comments, good questions in the chat here. So thank you, everybody. I think I've addressed everything. If anybody's got comments, questions, thoughts, you can throw it in the chat. We can take a look at it. I don't want to keep anybody online longer than necessary, but looks like the chat's slowing down. Cool. Well, thanks everybody for jumping on tonight. Thanks for what you do for our scouts. I'm really optimistic about scouting in our council. I'm excited that we grew membership in March. I'm not really sure why we were down a little bit in April. We think there might be a data integrity thing. A couple of you might have been online at the beginning when we were talking, but we were down 1.7%, but we were up in March. We recruited more kids in April than last year, and we're at where we are in the membership cycle. Membership can't go down, so we're not really sure how membership was down 1.7%, but we are really excited about where we are with membership. We feel like we're turning a corner, and that's really exciting. Yeah, so folks, it sounds like maybe the things trickle down. Thanks for what you do. Thanks for what you do for our scouts. And if we're doing a good job with the staff and the board and at the council level, and in little ways, job gets a little bit easier and more effective. And I hope we're doing that. And you've got more kids to work with, and so forth and so on. So everybody, thank you so much. And we'll be adjourned.